The chains bit into his wrists, cold and unforgiving. Commander Riven Solars sat slumped against the steel wall of the prison cell, breathing slow, shallow breaths. Across from him, under flickering overhead lights, she crouched like a coiled animal, still, silent, watching him with narrowed silver eyes. Her skin, a soft shade of icy blue, shimmered faintly beneath the cracks in her armored plating. He didn't speak. Not yet. They'd thrown them both into this tiny, freezing cell 12 hours ago. No food. No water. Just chains. Her ankles were bound. So were his. A shared cuff connected their wrists, two beings tethered in silence, enemies by protocol, allies by consequence. She broke the silence first. "You were supposed to deliver me," she said, voice sharp and precise, like someone reciting lines from a language she was forced to learn. "Not die with me." Riven looked up, eyes bloodshot but steady. Plans change. She shifted her weight but stayed pressed to the wall, her every movement defensive. The tips of her silver fingers twitched. Her lips curled. "You humans think kindness fixes everything," she hissed. "You're wrong." Riven didn't flinch. "I don't believe in kindness. I believe in responsibility." She laughed, a dry, robotic sound, almost tragic in its attempt to resemble amusement. "Responsibility? You called me cargo." "I called you dangerous," he replied. "Because that's what they wanted me to believe." She fell quiet again, her head tilting slightly. A strange flicker passed over her face, something like confusion or suspicion. He couldn't tell. She wasn't like anything he'd ever seen before. When Riven first saw her strapped to the medical chair in that facility, surrounded by wires and needles, something inside him cracked. She didn't cry. She didn't beg. She just stared, wide-eyed and alert, like she was learning how to suffer. They called her LYNX-9, a fourth-generation hybrid designed for infiltration and annihilation. But Riven had seen the way she trembled when the lights buzzed too loud. How her eyes followed every movement, calculating not for violence, but for escape. He should have handed her over. Instead, he pulled the trigger on the scientist holding the sedative, grabbed her arm, and ran. The next thing he knew, they were both captured. Now here they were, shackled together. Forgotten in a floating prison called the Dreadfall. A low moan echoed outside the cell, another prisoner somewhere down the corridor, not yet broken. Her voice returned, softer this time. "You killed your own for me." "I didn't kill them for you," he muttered. "I killed them for what they were doing to you." She didn't respond. But the tension in her shoulders lessened just slightly. Riven adjusted his position, wincing as the chain dug deeper into his wrist. "What's your name?" She didn't answer. He tried again. "They call you LYNX-9, but I don't believe you're a number." "They erased the old one," she said flatly. "Said it made me too empathetic." "What was it?" Silence. Then, after a long pause, "Nearer." The way she said it, quietly, like an echo she was afraid to chase, stirred something in his chest. "Hi, nearer," he said. Her eyes snapped to his. "Don't talk to me like that," she snapped. "Like I'm human." "I'm not," he replied calmly. "I'm talking to you like someone who didn't ask to be created, or imprisoned." She didn't argue. Didn't agree either. Just pulled her knees closer to her chest and rested her chin on them, staring past him. Time passed. Maybe an hour. Maybe more. Eventually, she started to shiver. He could see it, slight tremors in her shoulders, the way her breath caught. Without a word, Riven moved slightly closer. The chain between them slackened with his shift. "I'm warm," he said quietly. "You don't have to curl up like a dying animal." "I'm not your pet," she said through clenched teeth. "I know," he replied, and offered no more. She eyed him, wary. Then, after a long moment, she slid toward him with cautious, deliberate movements. Inch by inch. She didn't touch him, just sat near enough to feel the residual heat from his body. Her breathing steadied. Riven closed his eyes and leaned his head against the wall. "Why are you really here?" she asked. "I killed someone in uniform," he said. "Then stole their prisoner." She looked at him, studying him like a puzzle. "That's not a reason. That's a result." Riven turned to face her. I saw a girl being treated like a weapon. Not even a girl, just a thing. I've followed enough bad orders. I didn't want that one to be my last. That shut her up. Not in anger, but reflection. The light outside their cell flickered violently, and somewhere deep in the ship, an alarm wailed once before cutting off. Nira tensed again. Riven reached out, not to touch, just to let his hand hover between them. She looked at it. Looked at him. Then leaned against his side, just barely. He didn't move. Didn't speak. They stayed like that. I dreamt once, she whispered. Before they erased it. There were rivers. Colors I didn't recognize. It felt warm. Sounds nice, he said. She nodded against his arm. For the first time, she didn't resist sleep. She curled gently into his lap, like a memory she was afraid to lose, her breath slowing, her face turned inward, her armor cold but her body soft and warm. She didn't speak again that night. But her fingers, resting lightly on his knee, never trembled. The clang of the cell door snapped them awake. Steel boots. 2 guards. One barked orders. The other dragged chains. Riven blinked against the harsh corridor light as they yanked him up, pulling Nira with him, still bound by the wrist. She didn't resist, but her posture tensed, her eyes unreadable. They were led through narrow, grimy corridors that reeked of rust and sweat. The dreadfall wasn't built for mercy, only motion. Bulkheads moaned. Lights flickered. And behind every cell door, a heartbeat waited to stop. You two are on load detail, the guard growled. Cargo bay. Move. The cargo bay was vast, cold, and lifeless. Steel crates were stacked like tombs. 2 other prisoners worked in silence, one dragging crates, the other sorting rations. Riven and Nira were shoved into place. Sort and load, the second guard snapped. If you stall, you get shocked. Riven nodded once. Nira didn't blink. As the guards moved away, Riven knelt and pulled open a crate. Inside, sealed food packets, blinking tracker tabs, oxygen units. He tossed one packet to Nira. She stared at it. Then at him. I don't eat this. You should, he said, opening his own. We're not getting anything better. She watched him chew. Slowly, grudgingly, she peeled open her packet, sniffed it, then took a tentative bite. She winced. Bitter, she muttered. Better than nothing. They worked in silence, stacking crates, sorting gear, tethered together by that ever-present chain. Her movements were elegant, precise, almost too perfect. She moved like she was calibrated. You were trained for this, he asked, breaking the silence. For infiltration. Combat. Adaptation, she said without looking at him. Not manual labor. Riven smirked. Welcome to being disposable. She gave a small, humorless laugh. Now I understand humans. He didn't reply. As they moved a heavier crate together, their hands brushed. She paused. Her fingers twitched. He noticed. You okay? I'm not malfunctioning, she replied flatly. That wasn't my question. She looked at him, just for a second too long, then kept moving. Later, as they rested in a shadowed corner, away from the guard's eyes, Riven noticed her watching a crack of starlight through a broken ceiling vent. It wasn't much, just a sliver of space. But she stared at it like it was calling her. You miss it? He asked. I never knew it, she replied. He followed her gaze. Stars blinked like distant memories. The silence between them stretched again, but this time, it didn't feel heavy. She spoke first. You breathe slow when you're thinking. He looked over, surprised. You've been observing me? You're loud, she said, then paused. Inside. Not outside. Riven tilted his head. What do you mean? You carry noise. Guilt. Grief. It hums off you like radiation. He considered that. Maybe you're not as emotionless as you think. She didn't deny it. Instead, she shifted closer to the starlight. I used to feel nothing. That was the point. They built me that way. Then, you killed my handler. You touched me when I was bleeding. You spoke to me like I mattered. Riven stayed still. Let her speak. I started hearing things I never noticed. Heartbeats. breathing, pain. She looked at him. You made me defective. I think that means you're alive. The cargo bay door opened. A new shipment arrived, crates marked with red seals. Nira watched them closely. Biotech containment, she whispered. Hybrids. Parts. Pieces. Failed ones. A flicker of sorrow crossed her face, just for a second. Riven saw it. That night, back in their cell, they didn't speak for a long time. But she didn't retreat to the corner. She sat beside him, closer than before, their arms brushing as they leaned against the wall. Do you still dream? He asked. Not often, she said. But I remember warmth. Color. That means something, doesn't it? It means something's trying to grow inside you, he said. And not everything they gave you is all there is. She turned to him. Her eyes weren't cold. Not anymore. What about you? She asked. Do you dream? Riven hesitated. I used to. About a girl with blue eyes and grass in her hair. My daughter. Silence. A stillness that settled like snow. She died during a raid. My unit hit the wrong coordinates. Collateral damage. Nira's lips parted, but no words came. She placed her hand gently on his, unsure, shaky. Her touch was soft but deliberate. I'm sorry, she said. And it wasn't programmed. It wasn't recited. It was real. He looked down at her hand, small, silver-tipped fingers resting over his calloused knuckles. You don't have to be sorry. I am, she said simply. I felt something. It hurt. They sat like that for hours, wrapped in a silence that felt like understanding. At some point, her head tilted, slowly, onto his shoulder. You're steady, she whispered. Your heartbeat, it's calm. It helps me stay quiet inside. Riven closed his eyes. Then stay. And she did. Warden Krailvos stood before them, smiling. It wasn't a kind smile, it was clinical. Measured. Cold. He tapped the tablet in his hand, and Nira's shackles snapped tight around her limbs, locking her in place. Riven lurched forward, but the guards seized him before he could reach her. I've been observing your little, bonding experiment, Voss said, circling like a predator. Impressive. The hybrids learned to lean. Breathe. Mourn. You've awakened a part of her we never could. She was never yours to program, Riven growled, struggling against the iron grip on his arms. Voss leaned closer to Nira, ignoring him. Tell me, LYNX9, how does it feel to feel? Are you grateful for your little protector? Nira stared forward. I'm not answering you. Voss's smile widened. Still defiant. Fascinating. He raised the tablet again. Static hissed from the corner of the room as a screen flickered to life, displaying footage from their cell. Nira curled in Riven's lap. Her hand over his. Her voice, soft and trembling, it hurts. I'm sorry. Riven's jaw clenched. Nira didn't move. This is what I want the colonies to see, Voss said, gesturing to the screen. That these creatures can't be trusted. That they mimic. Attach. Confuse weakness for love. You don't know what love is, Riven snapped. I don't need to. I just need to prove they're pets that bite when given freedom. Voss turned the tablet. Initiate trigger sequence L42. A burst of electric light surged through Nira's collar. She gasped, not in pain, but confusion as her body stiffened. Her eyes widened, and her fingers began twitching uncontrollably. Riven thrashed against the guards. Stop it. You're hurting her. She's not supposed to hurt, Voss replied calmly. That's the point. This fear, this trembling, it's corruption. Emotion means instability. And instability means she's broken. Nira crumpled to the floor, her breathing ragged, her voice gone. Her fingers clawed at her neck, then at nothing. She's resisting, one guard muttered. No, Voss corrected, she's remembering. That's what emotion does, it makes them recall, connect. It's contagious. Dangerous. The lights dimmed. The collar deactivated. Nira lay still. Voss turned away. Return them to their cell. Let them stew in their little tragedy. Back in the cell, Riven caught her as she fell. Her body was cold, trembling. Her eyes were wide, lost. Nearer, he whispered, pressing his hand to her cheek. Come back. She blinked once, twice, then leaned into him, her voice barely audible. He rewrote my pain. I didn't know what was mine anymore. You're here, he said softly. You're still here. She clung to him, her breath shallow. I saw them, she whispered. Others like me. Screaming. Begging. I heard them inside my skull. He wrapped his arms around her. They're gone. He can't reach you here. But he can, she said. And he will. Silence pressed between them. You should leave me, she said after a long pause. No. You'll die. Then I'll die next to someone who reminded me how to feel. Her voice cracked. I'm not your pet. I know, he replied. You're the only thing on this ship that isn't. She leaned into him, eyes wet but angry. Why do you care? Because when I looked into your eyes back in that lab, I didn't see a weapon. I saw someone trying not to scream. Her breathing steadied. I don't know what I am, she whispered. They made me forget. We'll find out together, he said. She stared at him, studying the scars on his face, the hollowness in his eyes. I want to kiss you, she said, but I don't know what that means. Riven swallowed hard. It means we're both trying to remember what it feels like to be human. Or close to it. She hesitated, then leaned forward, her lips brushing his cheek, a soft, uncertain contact. Not passionate. Just real. And it meant everything. Later that night, Nira sat upright against the wall, Riven dozing beside her. I remember something, she said softly, barely more than a thought. He stirred. Yeah. A lake, she whispered. I was small. Or maybe not me. Just a fragment they forgot to erase. The water was clear. I wasn't afraid. Riven smiled gently. Hold on to that. I will. Footsteps echoed again. Another guard. Another test. They stood together, still chained. But this time, Nira didn't tremble. The sirens began without warning, long, blaring tones vibrating through every panel of the dreadfall. Somewhere overhead, the red emergency lights began spinning, flooding the corridors with an eerie pulse. Riven sat up instantly, pulling Nira with him. Her instincts kicked in before she was fully awake. Her eyes darted to the ceiling, the walls, then the door. Containment breach, she asked. No, he said, listening closely. This isn't a breach alarm. It's a purge sequence. Nira went still. They're clearing the ship, she said, almost to herself. He's going to wipe the evidence. And the evidence was them. The door hissed open. 2 guards entered, rifles raised. On your feet. Riven stood slowly. Nira followed, chained beside him. They didn't resist, not now. Not here. They were led to the central atrium, a circular chamber lined with surveillance monitors and surgical stations. It was colder than the rest of the ship, almost sterile. At the center stood Warden Voss, hands behind his back. He looked bored. I thought about spacing you, he said without looking at them. Simple. Fast. No questions. But you didn't, Riven said. No, Voss replied. Because this one, he gestured to Nira, has value. I realized something during our last test. She's more than a hybrid. She's a mirror. A glitch. One that makes men like you feel. She's not yours to study, Riven said. She's not yours to save, Voss snapped. She's a byproduct of our desperation. And when we're done here, she'll be broken down and archived like the others. Riven stepped forward. The guard shoved him back. Let her go, he said. Voss tilted his head. You'd give up your life for something not even real? She's more real than you ever were, Riven answered. Voss smirked. Very well. He turned to Nira. I'll give you a choice. Return to the program. Revert to protocol. We'll spare him. Nira stared at Riven. He didn't speak. He shook his head. She stepped forward. Voice steady. And if I refuse? You both die. Riven exhaled. Don't do this. But she was already stepping away. I submit, she said. Riven's voice cracked. Nira. I submit, she repeated, louder now. Deactivate my emotions. Reprogram my directives. Just let him live. Voss nodded to a technician. The machine next to her began to hum, spooling up. Nira turned back to Riven. Her voice was soft. You taught me something I didn't think I was allowed to feel. He was shaking. Don't do this. She smiled, and for the first time, it reached her eyes. I want to remember you. Even if I forget myself. The technician reached for the implant switch. Then something impossible happened. The screen behind them flickered. Lines of code appeared. The ship's AI, cold and mathematical, spoke aloud. Hybrid emotional override detected. Sentience threshold exceeded. Emergency protocol, human rights clause active. Chain of command terminated. The lights dimmed. Doors slammed shut. The guards turned, confused, weapons raised. What's happening? Voss barked. The Ari's voice echoed again. Unauthorized genetic deactivation denied. Lifeform LYNX-9 recognized as autonomous. Initiating shipwide lockdown. Sparks flew from the console. Alarms wailed again. Then every screen turned to Nira, her footage, her voice, her eyes, trembling with sorrow, whispering, I'm sorry. I felt something. She didn't look at anyone. She stood still as the ship rebelled around her. You triggered it, Riven breathed. Voss lunged toward the console. Shut it down. Too late. The AI pulsed through the walls. The lights exploded. The guards scattered. One fell. The other screamed. A pressure wave knocked Riven backward. He hit the ground hard, coughing. Nira ran to him, knelt beside him. You okay? She asked. He laughed, hoarse and broken. You just turned the ship into a revolution. They should have erased me sooner, she whispered. The self-destruct alarm began to count down, T-5 minutes. We have to go, he said, pulling her up. Escape pods. Docking bay. Come on. They sprinted through smoke-filled halls, side by side, every system on the ship fighting itself. Doors slammed behind them. Vents burst. Fire sparked across the floor. They reached the bay. 2 pods left. One already damaged. Nira hesitated. Get in, Riven urged. She turned. You first. No time to argue. He pushed her inside, but she stopped him. I'm scared. I know. I don't want to forget again. He held her face in his hands, eyes locked on hers. Then don't. She kissed him, not hesitantly, not softly, just real. Fierce. Final. Then pulled him in with her. The pod launched just as the Dreadfall tore itself apart. 2 weeks later. An outpost on the edge of the Orion wastes. Quiet. Safe. Riven sat on the landing platform, watching the dust swirl around his boots. A cup of stale coffee cooled in his hands. Behind him, the door creaked open. Nira stepped out, wrapped in a long coat too big for her. Her eyes were softer now. Less alert. More curious. You're awake, he said, turning. Yeah, she replied. I dreamed again. He smiled. Where'd you go this time? A mountain. There was snow. You were there. He looked down. I'm sorry for what you lost. She walked to him, sat beside him. I didn't lose everything, she said. She curled into his lap without fear, without doubt. Not because she had to. Because now, she whispered, I want to.